Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today on Biz Talk. It's APA's new online series discussing business topics relevant to the photo community. We all want to support you to be as successful as possible, especially during these times. I'm really excited today to talk to Andy Anderson. But first, we have Elizabeth Hanley back. Very excited to have her. Liz is, her business is Liz is All Biz. She's an accountant in San Francisco, and she does all kinds of good stuff to help you grow your business. She's going to update us on what's happening this week in the news. Hey, Liz, how are you?
Doing really good. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thanks. It's nice to have you back. Yeah, so this week was a little bit some disappointments hearing the money was depleted. Now we're hearing like some of the banks are getting sued because they're saying that they prioritized businesses that were having higher loans so they can get more money as a result.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. I think it's really important, especially with the PPP loans, if for some reason you didn't get your application through, that there are, it does look like there is going to be this next round of funding for both the PPP and the EIDL loans. So if you have not gotten your application through, keep going on it, because you want to be at the front of the line when that money comes through. So
yeah. I mean, I can even share I applied through Chase like weeks ago and still I don't think I've even heard anything from them. And then I applied through US Bank and they're like ready to go. Once they get new funding, they're ready to submit. But the question is, and that's one of my questions for you is if you have more than one application in, what do you do? Because you don't want a fraud alert.
That is a really great, yeah, we are. So you really want to think about it. If you have more than one application in and their applications are complete and they get sent to the SBA for approval, what it's going to look like to the SBA is you're going for multiple loans. So they're going to push back. So the other thing though is, like, from just like the consumer side, from like our side, is so many of these big banks, it's impossible to get a hold of somebody. So you really want to be thoughtful about where you're putting in applications and can you call them back, right? Like, so if you have an application in at Chase and then you're like, oh, I'm going to put one in at US Bank, like in your example, but maybe your US Bank banker is really responsive. If the Chase one application gets submitted, you want to be able to call someone to call one of those applications back, because what you don't want is both of those getting submitted, because this whole thing is going so slow and there's so many problems anyway. Like, you don't want to create more confusion if you can possibly help it,
right?
Because basically what would happen is usually we get a fraud alert that they would have to stop and figure out, like, were you really trying to get 2 loans? And we just like need these funded. So like, just be careful about it. So if you're going to put in a second application, make sure that with that second application that you have a line of communication where you can at least pull one of those applications back if one of them goes through.
And for me, both of those banks, all their communication to you is, don't communicate with us, right? I mean, we're not we can't take your call, blah, blah, blah. But I called one of the local branches of Chase, and, the woman who answered said that she doesn't know anything, but I kept pressing her, and she kind of said, "Oh, let me call this person and I'll call you back." And, and I'm sure now that all this is happening, they're probably going to try to be as friendly as possible with some of these lawsuits. But nevertheless, I would even people can go into the branches maybe too.
You want to be, here's the thing is the people in the branches don't know about the loans. So they're just going to be calling corporate for you. So you just want to kind of just like have an understanding of like how it works. Like there's nothing your probably local banker is going to really be able to do other than just, you know, make calls with you. So can they possibly do that for you? Yes, but I think you should just kind of like manage your expectations a little bit of like how far you're going to get.
Got it.
So I would just be really careful with that. You know, a lot of some of my clients have also had success through kind of like some of the alternative lenders. So like PayPal and like Square and Intuit and like Cabbage is doing loans. And so some of my clients have been successful with those getting funded, maybe because like the application or the portal is like a little bit easier to use. So I would just really encourage you that if you're like you hadn't got your application in yet, or it was like stalled somewhere, you know, ask around and see who of your colleagues is getting funded and what bank they're going through, and try that.
Got it. Okay.
To kind of see what's working. Yeah.
Right. So moving along to guidance. It sounds like we got some more guidance about what's forgivable for the people.
Yeah, we did.
Sorry, the Paycheck Protection Program, just making it clear.
Exactly, the Paycheck Protection Program. So for those folks that did get funded, you know, the next big question mark is, great, well, I would love to not pay this loan back. So what is forgivable? And so we all know that, you know, it's for it's supposed to be for payroll, right? So like 75% has to go through for payroll. So I think that the question becomes, for those of us that are self-employed, or you're a Schedule C and maybe you're not an S Corp and you don't pay yourself on payroll, like, so how is that gonna work? So, and this is my understanding of the Treasury guidance that came out, and I think there's a link in my Instagram, and you know, I will send it's some light Sunday reading I sent out. This is my understanding, and also to know that the banks might have their own understanding as well. But here's how I read it, and you can read it for yourself and take a look at what you think. So for self-employed individuals, you know, what they did is they took that number from your Schedule C, that line 31, and we divided it by 12, and that became our monthly paycheck. Right. And what it looks like they are going to do is they are going to hold you to that, so that you can't pay yourself more than that amount that was kind of committed from last year. So let's say if all that math kind of turned out that it was $4,000 per month, then that is going to be the wage that they are going to forgive. So for those of you that are self-employed, then of course the question that I know I thought of was like, okay, well, it's 2.5 times that. So what about that other 0.5%? I would really like that forgiven, right? So what are some of the things that you can put in there? So it does seem like it's very clear. I know there's a question last time I was on here about home office rent, stuff like that. It does seem like it very clearly lays out that it must be commercial rent and utilities. So I did want to kind of point that out. I do think that there's a possibility that there might be some flexibility around like utilities, maybe some internet or phone, but we'll have to wait for further guidance and kind of how the banks weigh in on that. So it's mostly going to be payroll. The other interesting caveat that I did see in there was that you were able to use interest. You could write off interest as forgivable on obligations taken out before all this started. So anyway, like I said, I will send you the link to the Treasury guidance, and you can see what you take out of it. Yeah. That's what I made out of it. And again, we'll have to submit that paperwork to the banks to get that forgiven. So be very interesting to see their guidance further on this.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Just quickly, what about healthcare costs?
No, the healthcare costs are interesting. Now, my reading of the Treasury guidelines was very specifically does not allow for owners' benefits.
Oh, so owners' benefits meaning if you're being paid by your LLC, would you?
So what I took that understanding again, and I'm just reading the source Treasury documents. And again, but of course our, the forgivable portion of our loans will have to be submitted to the bank. So there might be additional kind of caveats there that the banks bring out. But my reading of it is that as owners or a sole member LLP, that we might not be able to use our benefits or our health care. So that seemed very, I thought that was maybe going to be very black and white, and that is not what it appears to be. Like I said, you're welcome. I'll send the link to the Treasury guidance, but seems like they're giving some definite guidance on there. So it seems like what it's going to be is pretty straight compensation, interest, commercial rent and utilities. Those are all well within bounds. And of course, obviously, if you have employees, they would go in there.
Got it. Okay. That sounds a little more clear than before.
Yeah.
What we had to just guess at before.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if you want to just give us a quick update on the pandemic unemployment assistance changes.
So many feelings about this one. So much disappointment. All right. So first of all, well, at least they got us together and told us what's happening. So some gratitude for that. The system will open on April 28th. So if you are self-employed, you need to wait until then to apply. Now, if you're saying to yourself, but wait a minute, I was supposed to put in that application before. You're not wrong. That's what they were telling us. So if you're thinking, oh, they switched the story. Yes, they did. If you're confused, I'm confused. So that is correct. But you do need to wait till the 28th to apply. So the best kind of window of benefits is going to be for between, I'm looking at my dates here, 3/29 and 7/25. And so the maximum, they're doing a base rate, which is different than kind of what was represented before. So the base rate is going to be $167. Which is a pile of garbage.
I mean, it used to be $450, isn't that right?
Well, I think what a lot of people thought it was going to be based on was the rate in regular unemployment. It's 40 to 45% of your wage. So that's where that idea came from. It's also from the program this is based on, which is neither here nor there because that's not what they're doing. So the base wage is going to be $167 a week. And for that timeline, for that time period that I brought up, there's going to be an additional $600 to that. And so that is going to be between 3/29 and 7/25 for claims that you have between that period. Now, the pandemic unemployment insurance is going to be extended on either side. So earlier than that, back to February 2nd, and then beyond like July 26th through basically like December, just at that garbage base rate. So
got it. Yeah, that's a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah,
and of course that's California only, right?
That's California. Yeah, that is California.
Yeah, got
now
it.
New York, if you're in New York, they have beautiful infographics. Like I'm very jealous. They were like holding your hand through the whole system.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. They had it like beginning of last week.
Wow. Well, anyway, awesome.
Yeah.
So are any other last things you think are worthy of telling people?
The big thing that I would just say is if you my big takeaway is if you haven't got your PPP loan through, you haven't finished the application because they ran out of money and you just threw up your hands and felt frustrated, finish it up, just get it done so you can get back in the beginning of the line.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, a really good attitude to have right now. And it's really not that hard, and if if you have questions, contact Liz or your accountant.
There is lots of help out there.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you've got an awesome speaker.
Thank you so much, Liz.
You,
everybody, she's awesome. She's updating you like 2-3 times a day. No pressure or anything on her Instagram. So please go follow her on Instagram. Liz is All Biz. So thanks, Liz. Have a good one.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me. Have a great day, you guys, and
thanks for coming on.
Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Okay, well, that was awesome to have her. And so I'm really excited to introduce Andy Anderson. You know, right now, sorry, let me bring up my slide here for myself. Let me just make a couple announcements here. Everybody make sure if you have questions to put them in the Q&A area. You know, we got a ton of great questions from you all when you registered. And so I don't know how much time we're going to have to get to extra questions, but I think we're still going to get, you know, a really good discussion. You're going to come out of this with a lot of good stuff. I have Steve Beveljack on hold here. He's going to be looking at your questions to see if there's anything that we can add to the conversation, possibly once we're done talking to Andy, then we can answer them more. And Juliet Wolf-Robin is also on the line as well, if she may chime in. So let me introduce Andy here. Let me bring him on. Give me 1 sec. Andy, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. I'm trying to, I think I had you bring your, yeah. Hey there. So let me just read your bio a little bit here. Andy Anderson.
That's not necessary.
I mean, everybody already knows you, right?
Yeah.
Andy Anderson began his career as a staff photographer for Men's Journal, currently shoots with biggest and best advertising agencies in the world on brands such as Adidas, Asics, U.S. Army, Marines, Diners Club. I could just keep going on and on. Also, lots of editorial clients, Garden and Gun, Outside, Stern, Audubon. Hey, Andy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hope you're hanging in there. So, you know, the topic today, I want to, you know, talk, you know, mostly about stock photography, and it's been coming up a lot in terms of right now, just meeting clients' needs right now with the situation we're in. But it's also gotten people to think about stock in general, like moving forward with their careers, and, you know, thinking about the past of stock with the agencies and where we're moving forward here with stock, and starting to see, you know, more people, photo agencies and individual photographers starting to host stock on their own sites. So I want to get into talking about that, but first I want to just put in a little bit of a shout out and discuss your Art for Assistance program that you and a number of other photographers have been involved in. You want to tell us a little bit about it briefly?
Sure. You know, that's a really great effort that I was engaged in, but it was not my idea. It was Tim Tatter's, and I think Dan Goldberg, something like that. And they were the ones that actually spearheaded the whole program. And I got, you know, I was reached out by Dan. I think Tim reached out to me too. And he asked me if I wanted to be engaged in it. I said, sure, man. I mean, anything we can do to help our assistants, because, you know, those are the guys that are our battle buddies, right, when we're on set. And, you know, we got to kind of take care, you know, try to bring everybody with us along while we're going through this whole thing. So, you know, I'm excited to be able to give some money, you know, the money back to my assistants. And I know that I think collectively we've raised over $100,000.
Wow, that's.
I think we're on our way to $1 million. We want to get to $1 million.
Wow.
So
which image is it that you're actually printing? It's 100 of them, right?
Yeah, I think the photographers all picked their own image they wanted to print, as opposed to, you know, I have had some people reach out to me, well, can I swap it out, you know, with another image? And it's like, yeah, that's okay, but, you know, I can't do that for all of them, because not all of it's going to print, you know, well on certain paper. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, so you're not just doing one image, or?
One image.
Oh, and which one is that?
It's the horse image of the running, the one I shot in Argentina.
Oh, right. Okay. So actually, I have that here. I'm just going to share it with you all. So you go buy it. And I mean, this is an amazing image. And
But there's other photographers too. If you don't like mine, there's a lot of other people out there that are putting images up. So
right.
they're really beautiful. I think Eric Almas has got some stuff.
Yeah.
Tim,
I mean, geez, imagine that being on your wall. And it's an 11x14 print, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. That is definitely one of my all-time favorites of you. That was shot recently.
Yeah. Well, it was shot, 10, 12 months ago in Argentina.
I just wanted to jump in. I put the link for Andy's GoFundMe and the group's GoFundMe in the chat feed, so people can click on that if you guys are interested.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Steve. Cool. Well, great. So, and then before we get into stock, I want to talk briefly about you wanted to share some images of what you've been up to during this COVID time, huh?
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Well, I've been, I've traveled so darn much. I'm never here. I never shoot in Idaho just because, I just never work here. So I'm always on the road flying. So, when this all happened to all of us around the country, I just kind of wanted to reconnect with my community. And this is a way I could do it through photography. So, and it's been really fun. I've been enjoying it. I got people in the community asking, when are you going to take my picture or something like that. So, I'm shooting a person just about every day or every other day, which has been great. So just trying to keep me creative, but also kind of showcase my community.
Right. Yeah, let me pull up this some of these images.
That's my dog, Burnside.
Oh my gosh.
I shot that just in the parking lot or my driveway of my house.
Is it windy? Like his fur looks like
I combed his hair that way.
You're a hairstylist too.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Who's this?
That's Jill Lakiski. She's an artist that lives down not very far from where I live, and her husband is a smoke jumper in Idaho here. Just a really cool people, and she makes her own jewelry. She's a photographer too, so.
Love it. Oh, very nice. Who's this?
This is Lynn Ness.
Who is this?
Lynn Ness. He's a cowboy that I've known for, gosh, over 20 years.
So he's out riding on a daily basis?
That was his, yeah. I mean, I live in a very rural area of Idaho. I'm close to Boise, but it's also, it's pretty rural. So, but we got some really wonderful people who live in our community. So, and I've known Liz, Lynn for over 20 years.
Wow. What is that on the saddle there? It looks like some ceramic or something.
No, that's called the dowley. That's where the rope, for lack of a better word, for the neophytes, that's where they go around and they dowley it up when they're trying to get, if it's the other end of the rope is tied up to a cow or something like that. So that's kind of like a an anchor spot.
Yeah, love those lines.
He was just coiling his rope.
And who? Wow.
That's LJ Runyon. She's a horsewoman, an artist, lives here in Mountain Home. She's lived here her whole life. She's a really good person.
So what did you do? How did you contact people? Just
say, hey, want to get some photographs taken? And they go, yeah. I mean, we stayed our distance. We were completely cautious about that. I mean, I shot it all by myself. No lights, all available light. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Who's this guy?
He's the local, I think he's the city prosecutor. Great guy, just a great guy.
Nice.
And this is Jeremy Mink. He's a farrier. So he's working on horses, shoeing them.
Wow, you've been busy.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to stay busy,
Right. Wow, beautiful stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
You bet.
Moving right along. So, yeah, okay, back to stock photography. Right now, people have these options, do I start something on my own? And the kind of challenges with that sound like you don't get as many eyeballs on it, right? On your work if you're hosting it on your own site. Whereas
right.
On the other end, the whole stock world is they have lots of access to a lot of buyers of stock. And just give me a sense to start off, like when did you start putting stock on your own site?
I've been selling stock for, over 30 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. And, I was with some of the stock agencies like everybody else, was, Tony Stone, Adventure Photo, things like that. But what had happened is they sold out to some of these other holding companies. And then the royalties got to be ridiculous. And, when I started seeing the fact that they were, you were assuming all the risk and getting none of the profits, that kind of just, in my head is like, that doesn't make any sense. So I built my own site probably, 20 years ago. And it's been great. I mean, I don't, I'm not doing, millions of dollars, but it's a great little passive revenue for me.
Right. Now, your current site, is that something how long has that been up?
We redid that, I think, last year.
Right.
That was done through Rob Haggard, Photofolio.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's not something they normally have to where you can add keywords like that, and so they customize that for you. I think they're up to something at a Photofolio. They're supposed to be rolling out with something that everybody can use, I guess, which is
right.
Good. Okay, so I mean, like when you first started, stock, I mean, you could have just kept doing assignment work, but, like what made you,
Well, I'm constantly shooting personal work, so that's a good place for me to put my personal work is on my stock site, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously anything commissioned is not on there because, that belongs to the client and but it's all my personal work that I've shot over the years.
Mm-hmm. So when you're doing stock, is it like all quote unquote personal work? Or are you actually shooting, some of your stock that's like with intentions of it being stock?
Sometimes I do, but most of it's all personal work. I mean, I think some photographers are a little weirded out about, paying talent fees and things like that. I think there's a way you can negotiate that up front. If you don't want to pay, talent fees, you can do, you could say to the talent, we're going to do this test or whatever, but if I sell them, I'm going to give you 25 or 30% of what I shoot, and be upfront about it and be, respectful and have some integrity and follow through with it. But, you could do that as well. Got to mitigate your costs.
Yeah, that definitely seems like an option. I mean, I'm sure at some point it could end up being a little bit of some work to, if you tell a lot of people that, right, and you have to go back to each of those people whenever you make a story. But I guess that's a good problem to have, right? If you're
at some point you'll have to manage that a certain way, but it does help you, keep from, paying astronomical talent costs. Now, I haven't done that a lot. Some people that I've done it occasionally with, but it is a workaround to help, then the talent can make some money.
Mm-hmm. Also just I guess it's stock personal work in general. It's, you know, managing your commercial work and your marketing, reaching out to clients, all the business side of the business is tough. But how can you suggest people like split up their time between creating personal work and working on client stuff?
Well, I think that, now's the time, more than ever you can get out, once these limitations, lift. But, I think there's ways you can be creative. I mean, what a great portrait project. I tell this to a lot of photographers. Why don't they go shoot, do a night or do a series about, laundromats. Think of the cross-section of people you get in that, and doing personal work. Anymore, stock is not limited to a certain style or to a certain thing. I think people are getting more sophisticated. So, the typical stock shot you would see 5-10 years ago, I think it's kind of passé.
Right.
You could use other images, and if the creative's behind it, then you use it a certain way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think it sounds to me like your message to people is do the work you're passionate about, be a storyteller, get out there in the world. Don't just, wait for assignments to come to you. Get excited about something. And then stock is kind of a secondary thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I think that's a good approach.
Right. I think, because, I tried to start stock about, 10 years ago, and it fell flat on its face. But, of course, we all as photographers use the word testing. Hey, I'm testing this.
Right.
And it's like, am I actually doing personal work or am I testing? Because
exactly.
We're doing testing, and it's like we're working with models that are from agencies, and, they're not going to want to be in stock. So we may have to just fidget with things as we're shooting to kind of think about the end product too of stock. Can this still be used for stock as well?
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend anybody shooting, this is completely unethical, shooting stock while you're working on a shoot for a client that's paying you. That's completely unethical. So, let's temper that, right?
Right.
I think if you're going to do any kind of stock shooting, make sure you do it. It's off the client time and maybe on your own time. I think that's what you're asking, right?
Well, I wasn't necessarily asking if you're doing it when you're shooting a commercial job. It was more just if you're thinking about you're doing your personal work that's a test, quote unquote test.
Sure. Okay.
And
yeah. I see your point.
Putting that into stock and thinking about that ahead of time too, because we're starting a little stock site and thinking about a lot of these agency model shoots that we've done, and can we use those images? But,
I don't know why more photographers don't come together and we form your own co-op. Have a planet where everybody goes. You have these websites, right? And people can go there. They can pick, I think strength in numbers, right?
Right. That's actually one of my questions. And I wonder, this is kind of a bigger picture thing, and I don't know if there's a right answer for it, but could, a lot of photographers licensing stock on their own actually support the commercial industry a little bit more in terms of bringing back some of the value to our imagery, and taking away a little bit from the stock agencies. It's a very complicated situation, but is there any worth to it? Because obviously when you're selling your images on your own, you're going to be making 100% of it.
Right.
Right. And
it's not a good model to give, you assume all the risk and you get, the minimal return. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
The stock agencies are not doing any favors to the photographers.
Yeah.
No favors.
Yeah. There's that, the dilemma though of eyeballs, right? It's how many eyeballs are getting on your work, and can you get your work out there to enough people, and is it worth it for them to go from, you know, if they're traditionally buying stock, are they going to go out of their way to come to your site? And you have to have some great compelling work for them to actually go out of their way to come to your site. Let's see here.
Well, I think, you know, you just, you know, I think that I would, if I was a starting photographer, you know, at some point in your career, if you're going to stick with it long enough, you should start your own stock site. If that's what, you know, it's passive income.
Right.
And it's, you know, it's just another way to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's images in a lot of people's files that they could sell as stock. I mean, gallery stock, they reached out, I don't know, a few years ago, they wanted me to include my images in theirs. And it was like, you know, they're going to leave it to 100 people. And, you know, now I think it's well over 300, 400 people. And it's like, you get lost in the mix.
So you said,
and then you control, then you also control where those images go. Right.
Right. So you're not with gallery stock?
No.
Oh, okay.
I haven't been with a stock agency in 20 years.
Got it. But so basically that sounds, it would be hard for me to say no to that. Like, what was it tempting for you to
go with gallery stock?
Yeah.
Well, at first, but then we're, you know, but I knew where it was going to go. It was going to, they were just going to, it was a cattle call, right?
Right.
Once they get everybody they want, you get some, you know, photographers that have been in the business for a while, get them on the site, and then, oh, look at all these other people that are on the site. And then it just gets to be bigger. Then you get lost in, you kind of get lost in the mix. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, basically think about it long term. And
absolutely.
But the tough part about it, and someone mentioned, is that with our, you know, right now we have a lot of time on our hands, but once we start getting busy, it kind of falls to the wayside, you know. Mm-hmm. What do you got to do?
That's where you got to make a decision. Do you want to produce some stock? Do you want to have a stock site? I mean, you kind of have to make a decision.
I mean, in some ways, do you think it's easier to manage when you're doing it on your own? So you have to, like, submit and then, you know. Yeah.
I mean, once the images are loaded on the site, right, and you promote it through an email blast and stuff like that, I mean, it's going to take a while to get some momentum, but, you know, it'll serve you well.
Are you sending out email blasts regularly for stock?
Not regularly, probably once a month. Things like that.
That's pretty good for just for your stock. How do you decide? You know, do you send out?
There's agency access. They provide things. They provide a mailing list.
Got it.
And then you buy that mailing list.
Are you kind of splitting it up to where you're sending stuff out stock related and then more for like commercial certain?
No, my agent Heather Elder, she does that for my commercial work.
Got it. I see.
She does a pretty good job of that. So
nice. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, I want to kind of get a little bit more into the kind of your approach to like some of these shoots. I pulled up a few images from your site and I wanted to share with people. I'd love to kind of get your, tell a little bit of the story behind these shoots, and, you know, thinking about like a lot of these situations may not necessarily be, you know, it's more like you're a documentary photographer in them, right? Mm-hmm. And getting a release, and sometimes you're you may be in a whole different place. Like you're not even thinking about releases, or, you know.
Right.
Let me just pull those up. This is all new to me stuff here. Go. So yeah, this is
That was all in Argentina.
Right. Do you know William Albert Allard?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I whenever I look at your images, I think of him. By the way, what were some of your early influences of photographers?
Gosh.
I don't want to totally get into that.
You know, Kurt Marcus, I think. Kurt Marcus has always been a big influence on me. Kurt Ritz, Paul Strand, Bill Allard.
Right.
You know, those people.
So tell me about this particular shot. Just give me a little context. This was obviously personal work, it sounds like.
Yep. Yeah, but I had an idea. I wanted to go, I just get these wild hair at my butts, and I go, I want to go shoot some gauchos in Argentina. So I had known somebody down there that somewhat of a fixer that I fished with a long time ago, and he's the one that actually set this whole thing up for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? You went down there, you kind of told your fixer some of the things you wanted to shoot, and I mean, sometimes a tough thing is, you know, you have great intentions for making, you know, finding good moments and good stories to tell, but you try, you get rejected, you hit a lot of dead ends. Like, did you have any struggles at first?
No. I mean, yeah, I think everybody's had issues when they've gone on photo shoots and nothing works out. You know, but I had an idea what I wanted to do. I didn't have anything like, okay, I need to get this, and this shot, you know, photographed. But I went down with a general idea what I wanted to do, and I just embraced what was there.
Right.
I mean, my background's in editorial photography, so.
Got it. Yeah, you just kind of
setting a bunch of stuff up, you know, and it's so stringent, you kind of walk away sometimes disappointed. So I threw that plan out a long time ago.
What is your attitude around vulnerability? Like,
What do you mean?
I mean, for me, a lot of times I know I have to kind of put myself out there, and there's gonna be a lot of rejection and people slamming doors in your face. Do you get a lot of that, and how do you kind of deal with it?
I think we all get rejection, but you know, you kind of have to put that behind you. You know, it's like, okay, get all the no's out of the way so you can start having yeses, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, that's definitely the way.
You just got to keep going. I mean, you cannot internalize that, because then you'll be immobilized. So, I mean, we all have projects that we don't get or get disappointment, but it's just like, move on. It's all about attitude.
So in these contexts, you know, you may be stumbling upon these people, and you're carrying releases with you and having them sign. Nice. And then of course a location release too. So I see you have that on there. Can you give us a little kind of idea of what that's like to
collect? Well, you know, if you're shooting downtown New York and there's this, you know, there's a recognizable, you know, structure there, you're not going to get a release for that. These are mostly houses or people's private property, you know.
Right. Got it. So, I mean, but whether it's in the moment or you may have to call somebody to, you know, actually get a release, right? I mean, sometimes it's not as easy as you think.
Right, you just have to be disciplined about it, you know. I think just going with the attitude, you're going to get this done, and, you know, be smart about it. It's going to take a little bit of, you know, coordinating in the very beginning, but if you want to do your own stock, you just have to be, you know, structured.
Right. It's like part of the process of the whole process, right? I mean, it's just
right.
It's like taking a picture. It's like you got to have your releases with you, and it's it adds to the work, of course. But if you want to, I mean, it's thinking about it. Once you start getting used to it,
right?
It's just then
it becomes second nature.
Right. Let's move on here to Why is this? Oh, this is just amazing. What is this part of that same series?
Yep.
Is this like the same context, or is this somewhere else?
No, same place, during the same time frame.
Were there just, how many of these gauchos were there?
Well, Argentina and Brazil are full of them. I mean, in certain parts. And they're great people,
Right. Sorry, I actually used to be a photojournalist for 10 years. This is what I studied, but now I'm shooting mostly food. So it kind of feels a little foreign to me all of a sudden, because it's been a while. So.
Sure. Maybe you should go back and do it.
I know. I definitely have things I want to do, for sure. And this was part of the same project. Nice. Gosh, I mean, tell us just a little bit about that. I mean, you could have gotten trampled on.
Well, I've been around horses my whole life. I mean, my dad raised horses in Florida, and I live in here in Idaho. My daughter used to barrel race and stuff like that. So I've been around my whole life. And you can't. I mean, that's not a cropped image. That's full frame. But to the far right of that frame, basically within a foot of that white horse's hoof, is a gate. And I was just inside the gate fence, leaning up against it. So they were literally coming right by me.
I see.
But they couldn't touch me because of the fence.
Oh, I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that sun just right there, right in that perfect spot. Beautiful.
That was shot in Sweden.
Yeah, so when I, oftentimes, especially when I look at commercial photographers' work, I wonder, was this a styled shoot? Was this produced, or was it like,
just showed up. These are,
really?
Yeah. I was there doing a tourism campaign for Swedish Lapland, and this, we went salmon fishing one day, and I took some pictures. So.
Wow. So yeah, you just stumbled across these guys. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I mean, if you were to do a campaign, this would be definitely a big budget thing, getting like that canoe boat that they're on. I mean, that's like, you got to get a really good stylist to source that, Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal time.
Yeah, I mean, I did a series on the Delta here in the Bay Area, and it was a lot like that. I just drive the levee roads, and you just stumble across stuff, and you got to put yourself out there.
There's been more questions about the release, whether or not you need to have a witness to have a release, whether you do them on printed paper, or are you using an app to get the release? I think
printed paper. Yeah, I use printed paper.
Nice.
I think there are some apps out there. I haven't used them. And as far as the witness, if there's somebody there, yeah, you can get them to sign it. Normally there is.
Now, so like for instance, this shot here, and in general, like how much of your personal work is actually kind of more on that documentary sense, where you're coming across subjects, and versus, actually having models and
well, this was shot so how I got this project, I was working, Håkan Stenlund he works for the Swedish Lapland Tourism Board. And he had reached out to me. He says, hey, you want to come to Sweden and do a project for Swedish Lapland? I gave him all the images, but then I get to keep the images because they're mine, because he didn't pay me, but he paid for all my travel. So that was a trade-off. So, I think I went over there 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Nice.
So I got to do a campaign for Swedish Lapland, but also got a whole library of images that I was able to keep.
Yeah, you're really on top of your keywording. Any kind of advice on
Maybe. I don't know about that. I have myself going back. My office manager, going back, like redoing them, because we feel like we've left some stuff out. So That's been a daunting process.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, we have a lot of, Juliet, any other questions?
Yeah, there's some questions about if the models are ever compensated later.
Well, what I do normally with my people is, like these people were compensated in the beginning, and I've told them, if I sell in these pictures, and I have sent people money, that they'll be compensated for, but it's not a thing that I do all the time with everybody. A lot of times I'll just compensate them up front and be done with it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then there's a question about the location releases. Any challenges with getting location releases, or do you?
No, it hasn't been, but again, if you have a recognizable, landscape or something like that, you're not going to get it released, or if you're on some commercial property. But, for the most part, my stuff's all kind of, rural, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
And what about ever selling an image where you didn't have a release?
We don't do that.
I mean, I guess there's always the option of editorial in some cases.
Yeah, editorial is a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you not really go there, or?
Well, for mostly commercial, if I don't have a release, I don't sell it.
Right. But I guess you could even just say on your site, like editorial only or something.
Yeah, I don't think I've put that on there, but that's a good idea, actually.
And somebody's asking if your rep is involved with your stock, selling your stock.
If people come, mostly the client, my stock's all done through me because, I'm the one that invested all the time and money into it and the images and loading it. But if one of our clients that we've established comes in and wants to buy stock, then, obviously my agent will help with that. So it's never been really an issue.
So basically, what are the main things people need to look out for with creating their own site? They want to make sure to have keywords. People, so you told Photofolio all these things where be able to see the image, file names, and then you got to categorize them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that was?
I would start, I wouldn't put, if you're going to start, I wouldn't put, 100 images up. Start with a good library of images so you can swap those out when you want to contact people. And so you make sure you're on top of mind.
When you say a good library, you mean how many images are you?
Well, I would have a couple hundred, you know what I mean?
Nice.
To start. And
I notice you have lots of different variations from the same shoot, right? Is that important? Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
And a lot of questions about pricing. Are these priced in advance? Do you wait and speak to the person?
We speak to them, right? We speak to them.
And how do you come up with your pricing?
Well, we used to use, there was a pricing guide that we used to use, but, it really comes down to what their budget is. I mean, you can start in a general area, but, I think at the end of the day, it ends up with what the budget is. And if the budget can relate, if you can relate or you're okay with that budget, then you make the sale. But, we're not giving images away for $50.
Mm-hmm. And what are most of the types of people who are buying stock?
Everybody. Call it greeting cards. Gosh, I mean, it's a long list. Magazines.
Did you have a surprise best-selling image?
Well, that image, there's an image on my site that I shot, almost 30 years ago of a guy standing in a stream fishing. It's all golden. I probably have made $300,000 off that image.
That's impressive.
Wow. Sorry, which one was that?
Well, there's a golden image. I don't know. I don't know where you're looking. So, if you look in fishing in the stock, you'll find it.
Okay.
Idaho.
Right. I'm not looking at it now. I'll maybe look at it later.
Yeah, I can send it later.
Yeah. Nice. Okay.
Question about keeping track of licenses for copyright and
Blinkbid does a pretty good job of that. That's what we use for our invoicing and things. So that does a pretty good job.
Was that Blinkbid?
Yeah. I think that anybody that's starting out, I don't think they need to get into the minutia of that to start. I think you need to just start producing stock images. And once you start selling the images, then you start worrying about that. But I wouldn't get, too far in the weeds with that in the beginning.
Are you registering your images with the Copyright Office before
you? Some of them are.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, here's a general question for you. When you're doing these travels and you're in these places, I'm Steve Alajek, by the way, everybody, APA board member. One of the questions we're seeing is, Argentina, you're there on these people's lands and with them, and is there, what's your thought process on offering something to them in exchange for their time? General approach to these.
Well, that's what I did down here. I sent them all a bunch of prints. I mean, we sent a wad of prints to everybody as compensation, and they were happy with that.
That's awesome. And then they sign your releases for you to use the stuff as commercial. But when it comes to like other areas where you have either models or you have people that you put together a big test shoot, is there a relationship where you've come up with a pricing structure for them, or you've just had them sign up right, and then if you happen to get a great contract, you send something their way?
There's some potential sales right now that we might have with some people that I did on a test, and we're just waiting to find out, what the terms would, because, we haven't called them yet because I don't have anything to report to them. But we will report to them once we know what the usage is, and we can find out what they're going to have to be compensated. Because it'll be probably for pharmaceutical companies, so they're going to have to be, rightly compensated.
And one question we saw too, when people go to your site, are they pulling inspiration from your images and building a campaign around that, or they're like coming to your site saying, hey, we really want, a cowboy on a horse, and
I think it's both.
Can we see us?
It happens both ways. Yeah.
Are they often asking for a larger take as well to see more images from your shoot?
Yeah.
Where are you seeing stock in 10 years?
I don't think it'll be with the stock agencies anymore. I think that, that's not a very good model. I don't think. It's a commodity, Yeah. As you can tell, I don't have a really good feeling about stock agencies because I don't think they benefit the photographer at all. And I'll probably get a lot of flack for that, but that's okay.
I mean, I hear you. It's, we want, since most of us are shoot commercial, and we did this poll at the beginning, and it looks like about half of the people on this don't have stock. And what were those? Steve, do you have those numbers on you? It's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's like, what can we do as commercial photographers to besides creating unique original work and following our passions, on the business side, to help it so that our images are worth more, and we're able to make a decent living.
I don't know if I understand that question, so maybe.
Well, no, I think it's like you said earlier, start a collective, say, of other photographers. Like, what can we do to kind of help us as commercial photographers increase the value of our imagery, and not, because the trends.
It's a race to the bottom. I mean, it's a race to the bottom.
Like the agencies, it seems like it commoditizes images, the way the direction it's gone. And
you just have to say no. I mean, you know, when people come to you, and because it's a race to the bottom. I mean, I think, you know, everybody complains about the images, the stock images are so damn cheap and things like that, but then they keep selling them, right? They keep selling the images. So all you're doing is perpetuating a problem.
Right.
I mean, photographers just as much to blame as anybody else.
I think there, you know, a lot of the photographers that were in it 20, 15 years ago who have probably 10,000 images with Getty, you know, they're still making money. It may not be how much they used to. So that it's in, you know, they're not going to just take all the images off.
Yeah, they're in a conundrum.
Yeah. So but a lot of those people aren't necessarily telling everybody, hey, get your images in stock. They're not, from what I've heard, I've been talking to a lot of photographers this week that do stock, and they're not encouraging people to go do stock, and they're not that excited about it.
No.
Agencies. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why we, you know, can't encourage more photographers to license images on their own.
And I think one way to do that is to, like we talked about, have a place where a landing place where you can build this co-op of other photographers or their websites, so people go there. You know, start with 20, 30 photographers. Then you kind of, you're starting your own stock agency, but it's kind of your own. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It can be done.
Yeah. And the agents as well. I know Heather's doing that as well, right?
Right.
Well, good. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Steve, Juliet, any other things? Are they?
No, I just think thank you very much, Andy. We appreciate.
You're very welcome.
We're gonna continue these conversations each week. We're interested to know what people want to know. APA it's photographers for photographers, so that's what this is about. What do photographers want to know, and asking each other questions, and then letting other people listen in right now.
Yeah, I mean,
well, anything to help. So we'll get through this.
Yeah. Yep. We will. Well, thanks, Andy. Really appreciate your time. How can people reach you if they have, well, I don't know if you want everyone to reach you if they have questions, but
go to my Grindr account. No, I'm just joking. No, they can email me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Well, thanks again, and thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll be back next week, Tuesday. Go support Art for Assistance. Buy a print, please, to help all the assistants out there and everyone that's struggling. Stay safe.
They can donate even if they don't buy a print.
Oh, right. Exactly.
And then lastly, we do have open talk on Thursdays with Travis Keys. Check that out. And there's also a new APLA is doing series 2 with Andrea Stern, right? Is that right?
Yep. On Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific.
Right.
It's all on apanational.org. Go to events. You'll see all the upcoming webinars.
Mm-hmm. And let us know if there's other things you want us to talk about. We definitely have lots to talk about in the coming weeks. So keep tuned in. All right. Thanks
Stay
again.
healthy.
Yeah. Yes. You too. Okay. Take care.
See you, bro. Bye-bye.